Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. If you've been following along, you know we're all about creating that authentic analog sound, and today we're taking it a step further. After recreating Sunday Morning by the Velvet Underground, I thought why not tackle another legendary track? Today we're diving into George Harrison's Here Comes the Sun, recorded in 1969 by the Beatles. And we're going to try to do it using the trusty Tascam 408 Mark II cassette recorder. That means working with some limitations and finding creative ways around them. But before we dive into the gear and tracking, let's take a minute to talk about the history behind this song. George Harrison wrote Here Comes the Sun in Eric Clapton's garden in early 1969. He'd skipped a stressful Apple Corps meeting and found himself outside, guitar in hand, in the spring sunshine. That feeling of lightness and escape from tension was baked into the music. The Beatles began recording the track in July 1969 at Abbey Road Studios. John Lennon was recovering from a car crash, so the session was handled by George, Paul and Ringo. They tracked it on one of the studio's new 8-track machines, giving them more room to layer and experiment. George's acoustic guitar was recorded first using a Neumann U47 mic. Ringo added drums in 2 takes, mostly hi-hat, kick and tom, while Paul laid down a melodic bass line using his Rickenbacker 4001. Later, George overdubbed his electric guitar through a Leslie speaker, giving it that swirly vocal-like modulation. He also added one of the first Moog synthesizer parts in pop history, manually played and tuned. When they added George Martin's orchestration, some woodwind tracks were actually wiped to make room for the Moog due to track limitations. The final mix was done on a TG12345 console using manual lever rides and an EMT 140 plate reverb. No automation, just performance mixing, which is something I'm going to echo in this recreation. So the plan today is to try to recreate Here Comes the Sun using this Tascam 8-track cassette recorder with a handful of analog outboard gear. After the tracking session, we'll do a final analog mix down to the Revox A77 reel-to-reel recorder. Since we can't fit a full orchestra into the home studio, I'll be playing some instruments from Logic Pro and bouncing them together on tape to recreate those lush arrangements. Let's break down how we use all of the 8 tracks. Now, this is how the Beatles approached recording the original at Abbey Road, but I'll need to do things a little bit differently as I'm flying solo today. Here's a diagram of my tracking plan to work out how to go about this session. So this is where I want to end up, and I've only need to include 1 generation of bounces to get all the instruments onto tape. My brother picked up a bunch of these TDK cassettes from a charity shop recently, so I'll use one for this session today. Let's pop the cassette in and get going. Okay, I'll start off by recording a click onto track 8 and then record the acoustic onto track 5. This will give me a clear foundation to follow for the rest of the session. I'm going to use this Audio-Technica condenser mic to capture the high-end detail of the guitar. Track 1 will be for the bass. I'm aiming for that melodic but grounded style Paul always had. Simple slides, a bit of bounce and lots of space. I'm running through my Focusrite compressor on a gentle setting to keep things in check. We'll put drums on track 3. I'm using a simple kit today, partly as that's all I've got in my studio, but it'll also make it easy to capture the core rhythm in less takes. I'll then overdub the fills on track 2 from a sample kit and bounce them together for the full beat. We'll use minimal mics on the live kit to stay faithful to the original vibe. I've got condenser mics under the snare and on the overhead, and an AKG D112 on the kick. Right, on to electric guitars next. I've tried to emulate the Leslie speaker effect that George used on the original with my TC Electronics rack unit, and I'm running my Gibson SG through a Fender Champ with an SM57 near the cab. I'm going to combine this part with the acoustic guitar and bounce both onto track 3. This will record over the first drum part, which is no longer needed. Okay, on to vocals next. I'll start with the lead part, then layer a couple of Paul and George's harmony parts, recorded with a large diaphragm condenser mic, no reverb yet, just a dry take like they did at Abbey Road. One of Paul's higher harmonies in the bridge is above my range, so I'm going to use that classic Beatles vary speed trick to help. That's where they used to alter the tape speed on a project for either artistic effect or to enable them to sing higher parts than they could naturally. For this project, slowing down the tape helps me sing comfortably, and when played back at normal speed, it matches the pitch. Now over to Logic Pro for the orchestral elements. I've loaded several instruments for strings and woodwinds and will play those live with my MIDI keyboard. I'll record these a little hot to tape, which will add a bit of analog grit and hopefully make them blend in with the live acoustic instruments better. I'll record the hand claps and backing vocals in the bridge section next. You know the score by now. They will be combined with another internal bounce onto another track, which will be track 6 in this instance. We're on to the final parts now. The Moog is one of the key features in the original and must have sounded out of this world in 1969. I'm using a plug-in emulator from Logic and playing it in real time with the MIDI keys onto tracks 7 and 8. I can't quite emulate all the complicated modulation that's happening with the original, but we'll change settings between takes to get it as close as I possibly can with the gear I've got available. Here's how I'm approaching the final mix, live from the Tascam to the Revox. I'm basing this recreation on Joel Martin's stereo remix, which is part of the Abbey Road 50th anniversary edition. This is mainly as it's the version I listened to on vinyl, so I'm familiar with it, and I like his approach to panning. Right, let's do a rough mix to see how things are sounding at the moment. I'll play back what we've got on tape, and I'll run through the effects and compression settings. I've made some notes to work out what's going on with the original mix. For example, there's a few times where the panning of the instruments move around the stereo field. I'll leave those details to later though. Here's a list of the track allocations so I remember what's what and you can follow along. Okay, let's press play. I'm going to start by doing a quick mix to set the levels. Main vocals there.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. Little darling.
That's a quick levels check. It doesn't need to be perfect yet, but gives us a starting point. Okay, let's focus on a couple of tracks by themselves. So I'm going to play the drums first of all. Got this on track 2, so that's the combination of the live drums and the overdubs I did with the sample kit. So turn everything else off. And let's play the drums. So that's the raw sound as I recorded it. We've got an insert on channel 2, so I'm adding a bit of compression now using the Focusrite Penta. Okay, on to the guitars next. Here's the dry acoustic sound. And there's the Leslie style electric combined onto the same track. I got the sound pretty much as I wanted it while tracking, so that seems fine for the moment. The vocals are next.
Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here.
And a couple of the backing parts.
Here comes the sun.
Let's add the higher harmonies too.
Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright.
Okay, let's listen to the strings and woodwinds next. You can tell they're sampled, but I'm hoping we can get away with it in the context of the mix. I want to add some reverb next from my Korg stage echo and see if it adds a bit of depth to the track. And that's completely full on. That's off. Halfway sounds good to me. I'm going to try adding a splash of reverb to the vocals next.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright.
Yeah, a little bit helps. On to the Moog parts next. I'll cut the effects from the other tracks and add reverb to the synths. They panned left and right on the original. Oh, they've stopped. Alright, so I'm going to do the EQ and panning next off camera, otherwise this section of the video will last a bit too long. We'll come back with the final mix on the Revox reel-to-reel recorder so you can hear how this recreation has turned out.
Here comes the sun, doo-doo-doo-doo. Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright. sun. Do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun. And I said, it's alright. It's alright.
Well, thanks for getting this far and checking out my arrangement today. It's been quite a tricky one to learn and record due to the changes in time signature and densely layered arrangement. I've enjoyed the challenge though, and it's definitely opened my eyes to the incredible songwriting production skills that went into creating the original at Abbey Road. Let me know if there's another song you'd like to see recreated on the channel, or if you'd prefer to see some more original material using these same kind of techniques. Anyway, thanks again for watching, see you next time, and let the music roll.